Do you see that button? What do you think it does? And that's basically usability testing. Just kidding, there is a little bit more to it, and in this video we'll get into what a usability test is, how to conduct it, and when to run a usability test. And we'll make sure you don't scare your users. Part 1. What is a usability test? In a usability test, you ask your users to perform a specific task on a product or prototype. While the participant is exploring the product, your job is to observe them and make sure that you understand where they get stuck or confused. Gather all of that data. That's important information. Why is it useful, you ask? Usability testing replicates the first experience that your user has with a product. Mostly, you get to understand users' first impressions when they encounter your product and understand whether they're able to learn it by themselves without intervention from someone else. You may have an incredible product team, the best in the 7 kingdoms, but they are not representative of all your users, and so you have to conduct usability tests to see how your users actually perceive and use the product. Because you can conduct a usability test with a Figma mockup or a Framer prototype, it is much cheaper than building out your entire product with design effort, engineering effort, and then figuring out that your customers don't know how to use it. Finally, if someone on your team needs to be convinced that the interface isn't working, there's nothing more persuasive than your user getting increasingly agitated while trying to use your product. It is the best thing since sliced bread, but how do you do it? The usability test, not the bread. You get it. Part 2. How to conduct a usability test. A usability test makes sure that the product you're building is usable. Your product could be beautiful, like this egg-shaped glass of wine, but your users may still end up hating it with all their hearts. Look at this monstrosity. I don't even know how to drink from it when I'm sober. Forget after 4 glasses of wine. If you were the creator of this glass and you're not in love with burning money, this is how you would conduct a usability test. To begin with, you need to find people who own and use wine glasses. These are the people that you're going to be testing with. Make sure you get people from all the groups that you want to sell to eventually. Which brings us to the first rule of a successful usability test. Make sure you're conducting it with actual people who you'd want to use your product. Since we're human, you'll want to start the session with an introduction, telling your participant a little bit about who you are, why this test is being conducted, and make sure that they know they're not being judged for anything that happens in the session today. Also, you can use this time to ask any introductory questions. So if there's context you want to gather on previous history of using similar products, how tech savvy they are, where they come from, ask these questions upfront before you run your test. Once you've done that, you'll want to ask them to start the task. That is, drink from the egg-shaped glass of wine. Note that you are not just handing them a glass of wine and saying, explore, play with it. The second principle of usability testing is setting up specific tasks for your participants to conduct so you can test particular flows in your product or feature. Let's say you're releasing a Slack integration for your product. Your tests may include setting up the Slack integration or using it for the first time. I'm also attaching a step-by-step guide on usability testing with real-life examples of usability testing questions from companies like PandaDoc, 15Five in the description below, so do check that out if you're actually setting up a test. Finally, you will also want to encourage your participants to think out loud during the test. You want them to vocalize what they're thinking or feeling at all times through the task. That's how you will discover where users feel confused or seem to get frustrated. And that brings us to the third principle of a usability test. Shut up and listen. You'll want to encourage your participants to speak up and instead focus your attention on listening to them and observing them. Part 3. When to conduct usability testing. Ideally, you should be conducting usability testing at each stage of your product development. I'll go over the situations quickly, but if you'd like a deeper video on that, leave a comment below. When you're in the ideation phase, you can build prototypes of your product and test them very quickly and cheaply. Even design mockups in Figma or Framer are good enough. The feedback that you gather at this stage will ensure that you don't spend too much time working on something with huge usability challenges. Usability testing continues as your product matures. So let's say you've built out a first version of it or an advanced prototype, you'll start to be able to test very specific flows. Are people able to log into the account correctly? Are they able to discover a specific feature or set up that Slack integration we talked about? Finally, you can also do usability tests after your product is launched. Generally speaking, you'll want to do this if you're redesigning big parts of your product, or if there are specific parts where you find that users are dropping off and you want to figure out where they're getting stuck. And that's basically usability testing. Subscribe for more videos and live streams on UX. Until next time, with love, Team Loop Panel.